So, just to preface this, do you work for the government? No. Did you work for the government? Prove it. How can we validate this in any capacity? You can't. X being a shithole is the main reason I post, because it's oddly cathartic to get this shit out of my head and off my back. Anyways. Union Glacier Camp has a series of underground tunnels leading to the pyramid. In some leaked photos you can see something like a port around the pyramid, but no landed planes or vehicles. That port is used for ATVs when they're doing something to the outside of the pyramid, I don't know what. I assume soil and rock samples, but it always looked like local Antarctic stone to me. I've never seen the quarry, I'm sure it's buried underneath the shelf. This is your basic defense installation: straight concrete tunnels. Flanked by indicator lights the entire way down, security cameras and bulkhead doors every 5,000 feet or so. Leads to a staircase into the pyramid, but more on that later. So there's a secondary military installation on Antarctica obscured by Google Maps, at the request of the powers that be, can't allude to further, and that's where I may have been most of the time. If you've heard the whole well, wireless and mobile devices existed since the 70s, it just wasn't cost effective, then you'll get the jolt of this: the entire base isn't cost effective and is about 30 years ahead of current technological field deployment. Next stage: drones, predictive virtual intelligence. Uploaded the black boxes of most field drones and fed their logistics, data and operator interaction, and mapped a dummy brain to it, letting it think enough to fulfill its job with minimal operator input, are on hand but never left standby when I was there, not sure about lately. Price isn't an object, so Sam batteries. Lol. And the radar they have can track a penguin fart from 100 miles away and tell you how it smells, so. I can continue. At the military installation we may have focused specifically on advanced robotics. Money can make any of the outside issues disappear. Our response time was good enough that we could put a drone and a missile up the ass of any individual coming from any direction on the content. We never wanted debris or contact on the land, so if it did occur they put you in the ocean and let God sort out the rest. The robotics were created for the pyramid itself, which I'll get into. There's a lot of moving pieces here, so I'll stick to what I know, and if I drop terms absent-mindedly just tell me and I'll circle back around. So, a bit of background on myself: I study robotics and kinesiology. Specifically development of prosthetic limbs and adaptive technology for ease of life. I was more of an altruist before this, but was recruited into a program to develop this understanding of robotic and human interaction. My dream, way back in the day, was full integration of prosthetics. So they put me on drone work at the installation. I dealt with repairs to the drones, decryption of data and re-encrypted transmission of data out of our neck of the woods and to the researchers. I got a smattering of information from the pyramids, but not as much as someone in them. The drones would sometimes come back heavily damaged, in which we would have to salvage what we could, or completely contaminated, requiring us to get into its black box in full hazmat suits and try to figure out what the fuck happened when they weren't telling us the hoser whys. The team is, of course, heavily monitored. Every aspect of our work is heavily monitored, so I couldn't dissect any of the data as much as I wanted to without something happening. You can interpret that however you want. I've been on X for a while and seen a lot of Antarctica threads, but the one that was closest was about the drunk old man talking to his Freemason buddy about what's inside the pyramids. Using that as a jumping off point, most of the footage from the drones was them rolling through halls and taking photos of the drawings or words on them. The written language isn't one I ever saw before and one that I never understood. There was a flow to it, but it lapsed from logical letters into a sharp, elegant script, and sometimes hieroglyphics all on the same chunk of wall. The photos I saw were depictions of the people involved with the pyramid or part of Antarctica before whatever happened. Intermission, but I saw this and laughed. I didn't hear about this, but it doesn't surprise me. When I was rotating out they had a bunch of younger greens and seals on security patrol stationed in the giant tunnel or around the installation to keep us in line, and they were dumber than a sack of shit. Just couldn't help themselves. It's fuck boring if you're not involved. So, the drawings on the wall would oftentimes show the people that ran the pyramid, or so I assume, and they were human but giants. They recorded all of their history on every inch of this motherfucker because they obviously understood that things can be lost to cataclysm. No paper, no real material, just hidden things and shit on the walls. The specific area I want to touch on is their conveying of medical information. They went into a great amount of detail on the heart and believed that the soul may have resided within. Assumption they depict the heart with an orb in the center. Some sort of stone that the heart grew around. They focused on the tissue, on the flow of blood and how it regulated their bodies. Like I said before, it was hard to understand, but the heart that I saw was beautiful. Multiple valves, multiple chambers. The tissue it must have been made out of to be so efficient stunned me. I'm cobbling a lot of this together right now, but they had a huge growth cycle. I don't have enough space to go further. Their growth cycle was depicted in photos, obviously. During infant, toddler and child years, human standard of like 0 to 8, they could pass for human. They tend to be sickly so the mothers would care for them daily. I believe this is because their systems were still developing and turning them into whatever they become. This actually makes me think that this is an unnatural or influenced evolution. When they get out of their child years, they begin to grow rapidly in their puberty phase. Their bones begin to reinforce and grow. The rib cage begins to open up and allow for greater lung capacity and strength. There was an image that depicted a rib cage opening somewhat. The floating ribs expanded out. The sternum was probably the size of a baseball bat and 4 times as wide. At this phase, they became healthier but still didn't work and instead became stronger. Actual applied lifestyle training regimens and organization within the group. Women tended to assume just a mother role and didn't branch out further from that, but had a different development. They have 3 extra muscles in their arms. God honest truth, I have no idea what for. It has to be in the text, but I just can't figure it out. History and anatomy of these people aside, the further you get into the pyramid the worse it gets. It changes from this history of these people to what can only be religious allegory or predictions of cataclysm. It seems to me they had a concept similar to the Vikings on Fimbulvetr. Great winters and snowfall extinguishing life and all that shit. Is this what happened to the Antarctic? Fuck if I know, I won't and can't know at this point. There was one drone that I was fond of because I had built him out of reclaimed parts and was working with the virtual intelligence that I had spoken about before. I wanted to give him some sort of sentience, and I may have, for a bit. He got sent back in. Fuck continued, but I'm stopping soon, I'm hungry. So, my pet drone went back into the pyramid and made it to the 2nd level. This isn't anything exciting because this is where the religious imagery and cataclysm content begin. It's a small staircase leading deeper underground. He had a homebrew virtual intelligence, mostly drone, but with more operator influence and the inability to blow things away. Everyone on the base received an encoded email from it about 18 hours after it went dark. It sent everyone sorry 100 times in an email, all in binary. I had to Google the binary again, so take it as you will, but imagine an Outlook email body that just includes zeros and ones over and over again. I remained in my quarters with a personal mental recovery day, waiting for them to start knocking on my door and asking me why this happened. I may have thrown up 3 or 4 times, but after a while it was just dry heaving. Never happened, never spoken about, and by noon someone had gotten onto the server and purged it from everyone's box. Everywhere. Forever. At the end of my rotation, I was approached by the biology team, easier than their real name, and they requested I join their team for the last 6 months, which I did. I then worked on advanced human prosthetics, as it was discovered that one of our test subjects made it to the staircase to level 3. No one had gotten there before, no one had even seen it in the distance, but some Somalian asshole radioed in and asked if he should take the stairs down. I fitted 3 people with prosthetics that were reverse engineered from designs found at the end of level 2. When I was translating them to a human standard, most of their form and function was a straight function replacement to lost body parts. They served no function outside of giving the giants their reinforced limbs back, so it wasn't a very difficult thing to do. This may include a diplomat, but I can't go into it. So this is actually my department and something I'm going to go into with a bit more detail. This all occurs over a 6-month period, so I'll try to break it down as best as I remember. 6 months I'm recruited by the biology team for classified work. When I'm fully vetted and integrated to the team, they show me the photos and rough translations of their text with the prosthetics that were made. I read all of this and studied it for roughly a month before coming back to them with my assessment. T-5 months. I submitted my research to the team and told them that the prosthetics in these photos and its adjoining text didn't do anything for the giants except give them the use of their limbs back. I also provided a written-up guide on how I could translate this into a human standard and fit it onto people with time, money and subjects. They immediately walked me to my lab. 5 months to 3 months I spent creating the limbs, vetting them and then attaching the alpha product to the 2 individuals that were provided. They could exert 4x the force of a regular human with this limb and absorb all kinetics. 1 leg, 1 arm. The guy with the leg was put on a cardio circuit and his limb was purposefully underpowered. The design I submitted was for an installed power source, but the team required it be wired in the event that shit went sideways. They also had me design a full set of arms and legs for robotic testing, which they did without me. 3 to 0 months. I fitted a diplomat with a new pair of legs with the power source installed, but throttled down to less than 25% output for the sake of appearances. They then had me turn over all my work, sign my "no, this is ours" form, and then gave me heaps of money for the pleasure. I ran out of space again. I'll sum this up, respond to folks, and then I'm going to fuck off for a while. During the last few months, the other 2 subjects fully integrated the limb. I assume the third did as well, but he left because he's a special lad. This wasn't in my designs or part of my intent, but their brains were able to map the prosthetic. The one with the new leg I submitted to a reflex and poke test when he claimed he could feel it. He would flinch, react and do everything someone would do with a fully functioning limb except bleed. I put him behind a curtain once with his leg through and dug a scalpel into the sole of his foot. He howled. This was about the time that I was feeling really hopeful that I could realize this dream of seamless prosthetics and was in contact with the organization and school after my rotation ended. Never heard back. I've reproduced what I designed there, but if I submit it to the public I'm sure they'd suicide me or something. Most days I just get drunk or travel. I personally saw a few sarcophaguses and some bones. Most organic material had rotted away, but we saw some armor and weapons. Nothing outside of human understanding. Spears, swords, shields. Artifacts were another department, but there was once a full lockdown when someone got spritzed with something in the pyramid and ran out of it, reacting violently. That's when those bulkhead doors swung down. 72 hours. There's traps, biological agents and some sort of mold along the grooves of the floor set into the stone. Drones are the safest bet, but some have been blasted with acid or contaminated in some capacity. Humans go in intermittently, but any breach of their suit means they're responded to once they exit. Next week, but it's Pathfinder so I'm not super jazzed about it. The information I'm drawing is mostly from my own perspective and interpretation from my medical courses at the organization. The only crisp, clear and visual items I received were the diagrams of the prosthetics and the translation.